Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel. It's been a while since I last uploaded. Please to disregard the infinity screen over here. It's just going to be like that until I choose like a document or something, or like a window to show you guys, right? Um, but I wanted to go over some of the words that I got in February, as well as some that I believe were like fulfilled. But I do believe the ones that were fulfilled, I might have read about them in my last video, but I'm just going to go ahead and read everything that I got for February, as well as notes that I got after the month was over and like enlightenment on it. And I'm still trying to figure out like the timelines on these words, right? Because I understand that, time is simultaneous, and sometimes receiving a word can be like over the span of multiple days. And I'm just trying to really figure out what's the best way to have the conversation with God and then share it. And even then, I'm still having a tough time like accepting that. But then I feel like I'm constantly getting um, confronted with, well, if you know that something's going to happen before it happens, do you really want to live with that guilt, and do you want to face God about that? And like, not really. I'm I'm not trying to piss God off. And so let's get into it. This might go over 30 minutes. If it does go into over 30 minutes, then I'm just going to make like a part two. So for February 2024, the first day, the word I received was animal energies, and the metaphor of animals in the Bible, right? And so something that God had been talking to me about was for each animal, there is an appropriate counterpart. And at least I know growing up studying, there was always a reference to a lion must fight a lion, right? I don't know the exact scripture. I don't remember it, but I remember having this Bible study and having the conversation when I was a kid and just a couple months ago with like a sister. And she said the same thing, a lion must fight a lion. And it was at this point where, God told me, hey, the devil is a grand imitator and he believes himself to be a lion, but he is not a lion because he cannot create, right? And so he was like, he imitates a lion. So do you really think that he could face a true lion of God that God had made, right? And I was like, well, no, not at all. I don't think it's a match, right? Like if it's a fake lion versus a real lion, come on now. We all know those odds, right? So then I heard, and this goes into like, I guess how I hear words or my gift or whatever you want to call it, but I hear like communication signals and like stuff like that. I don't know how to describe it other than that. Um, but I heard like a dispatch communication voice on a radio, and I heard it saying, go, 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 go. And I saw this general, like, he's like waving people down, right? And they're like these paratroopers off like this thing. I don't know what it was. It was just flying, but there was lots of them just jumping off the side of it. And I mean, I've seen helicopters, I've seen a few war movies or whatever, but I don't know, I had never seen what this thing was. Like it was long ways like this and they were jumping off the side of it. And then God showed me the flight of the archangels, which is from the Rain of Fire movie. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. It's like 2002, Christian Bale with Matthew McConaughey, and like dragons emerge from some tunnel in the UK, right? Let me pull this picture up so y'all can just see. And this is the character that Matthew McConaughey plays, right? The movie's called The Rain of Fire. Now, God showed me the scene where they have to capture the dragon, or they're trying to bring this dragon down, right? They're trying to kill it. And so what they do is they have this strategy that they go up into the air, and then they have these soldiers that they call the archangels, and the archangels jump out of the helicopter when the helicopter flies over the dragon, and then the archangels put like this net on the wings, and then they like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like they put nets on the wings, and then they have like a electromagnetic field almost, because these things have to be stuck in the ground, and then they like create some kind, no, oh, actually no, that's wrong. I think that's like to figure out location and to figure out like the navigation system or something. But they put the nets on the dragon's wings so it can't fly anymore, and then they shoot like this stuff at it. Like if you guys want to see the movie, I highly recommend it. It's a great movie. I think the graphics are awesome, right? But God shows me this, right? And then he said jumping off a copter to take down a dragon. And then he emphasized again, for each animal there is an appropriate counterpart. And it was like heavily stressed, right? Like for each creature there is an appropriate adversary. Okay. Now I highly recommend you watch the movie just so you can understand the context of like the message that God is telling me. And if you've seen it, then you know what I'm talking about, right? Um, and then the Lord told me, there are those of you that were at the right time to lure the dragon to the dragon slayer. And despite a dragon's excellent vision, they cannot focus in the changing conditions of twilight, aka the magic hour. All evil springs forth from one bull dragon. I know it sounds crazy, okay? Like you think I don't write this stuff down and then just think I'm like a freaking crazy person, right? Whatever. Whatever. The reference I feel I'm getting is like all evil stems from one dragon, which is the devil, right? And so the devil uses his little minions, and in this scenario it could be, the female dragons that are much smaller than the male, to go about and do the shenanigans and do like the evil stuff. And in this movie, what they discovered is there was only one male dragon to fertilize the entire female population. And there were a bunch of little females all over the place, right? And so their reasoning was, hey, if we take down the male, then everything else will be easy after that, right? Get to the root of it. And so I believe that's what the Lord was saying. I believe, I don't know, something has occurred, or something is happening, um, as far as like, the spiritual warfare, that perhaps, we're getting angelic assistance in this time. And the goal of this is to take out the root. But that's what I got for the first day of February. And I know that's like, I didn't do a good job at explaining it, but it'll make more sense, I think. So on the second day of February, I got a mother asking for a son. Where is my son? He must be returned to me. I believe that this was possibly Alexei Navalny, who his mother publicly inquired about him, that I read about as of the 17th of February. Now, I haven't followed that story much, but I do believe that they released his body out to her, but I believe that it was like suspicious or something. I got strange downloads today. The Lord keeps talking about under the mountain. He says, you know where to find me. There is a push for something to be born, a strain like a pregnancy, a contraction. The Lord says he wants it to be birthed, and there's resistance in birthing this, but it must be fulfilled. Now, he had been talking about under the mountain for like 2 years to me. Like he kept saying under the mountain, under the mountain. And I was like, okay, like does the mountain have to be destroyed? Is it like, I thought it was a reference to, God moving mountains and things like that. And I just didn't get it. But I Googled it the other day, and the king under the mountain is a folklore trope which involves legendary heroes sleeping in remote dwellings like caves, mountains, and islands, and their presence is usually unsuspected until there is a crisis or a time of deadly peril in which they wake up and save whatever town or area that they're in. Um, and so I was thinking, okay, so when Jehovah tells me, you know where to find me, is he the sleeping king under the mountain, you know? And it's like, hey, we're in peril. Come help us out. So I thought that was kind of funny, but I also was like, something must be birthed, and I'm not sure what it is. Um, because the birthing of something could be an idea, a specific event, or an actual individual. But I just get the feeling that something needs to be born. Like, and obviously there is the reference to, you know, the woman expecting the child and the dragon waiting to devour, right? But is it the coming of Christ? I don't know. You know, like I really don't know. Um, but whatever it is that needs to be birthed must be fulfilled before the Lord, you know, comes in and saves the day. So on the third, I heard soccer chanting. I just heard like, like huge crowd. Like if I was in the middle of arena and these people were chanting, right? And it wasn't until like, yeah, a week or two later that I saw the news of the World Cup being held in New Jersey in 2026. And I believe the Lord wants us to watch any news that may come out of this or that revolves around it. On the fourth, the Lord told me that Pharaoh will perish in the Red Sea. And then I heard Saigon. And I don't know what Saigon is, so I looked it up. And it is now named Ho Chi Minh City. It is the largest business and financial hub of Vietnam. There is a specific military operation that happened during this transition of it being Saigon and becoming Ho Chi Minh City that is relevant to the overall word for the month that the Lord gave me. Um, I highly recommend reading that because I just feel like if I try to explain it, like it's not going to make sense. But he is saying read a military strategy plan that happened in Saigon during these military campaigns where it stopped being Saigon and had to turn into Ho Chi Minh City. And there's a specific evacuation plan in that the Lord wants us to pay attention to. Now on the 5th, I had started writing down the words for that day. And instead of it being 2/5/24 for the date, my phone for some reason put 4/5/24. But I believe that to be a timeline, because it also fits a lot of like the eclipse stuff or other words that I've talked about. And so the word I got for this was prep time, strategies for war. We are about to go to war. This is prep time. And then the Lord gave me a restaurant prep time, I guess, analogy, right? Where he says, Gab, like when you're running a restaurant, do you cook the food the second that the people order it? And I was like, well, no, like sometimes you have food that's already prepped and you kind of just assemble it together and then heat it up, right? And he was like, okay, so this March and April are going to be big months, specifically April, but March is going to have a lot of things happening in it as well. And he said, this is the prep time. This is the time that all the vegetables, quote unquote, need to be cut up and sectioned. All the sauces need to be pre-made. and all the meats need to be organized, and if they need to be cooked, they need to be cooked beforehand. That way, when it's time to serve the meal, everything is ready for the show, like for the meal, right? And so what he was telling me is, we are about to go to war, and this is prep time, and we must be prepared for what is about to happen. He also reminded me of the word I got back in 2020, where he told me, you are going to go ahead and see what is to come in the future before everyone else sees it. So by the time everyone else reaches the point that you have reached, you are prepared to guide them through it. Now, some of y'all understand this, especially if you're familiar with the story of Joseph and how he was sold into slavery by his family. But because his family sold him into slavery, he attained a status that none of them had. And when famine came to his nation and his family was no longer able to eat, I think it was like 20 years went by, like in between him being sold and him achieving this status, right? By the time that happened, Joseph had attained such affluence that he was able to feed his siblings and his family because of that. Okay. If he, and this is like one of those bittersweet stories about, God and his wisdom and all that stuff. But if that had not happened to him, then he would not have been in a place to provide for everyone when he needed to. And so some of y'all have been, going through stuff since 2020, but because you have gained so much wisdom and foresight in what is happening because of the circumstances that you are in, you will be in a position to care for everyone when this time is going to come to pass because you've already been through it, if that makes sense. Like, this is going to sound weird, but it's like you have already experienced that grief for when the real grief is going to come to pass. And I'm not saying the real grief, like, I guess that was the wrong way to put it, but like, you have already been past this point. And so like I don't know how to describe it other than time travel, right? Like, you traveled forward in time, and now this event is finally going to catch up to everyone else when you've already known about it for, like, I'm hearing for 4-5 years. And if you know, you know. And if you don't, you don't. You either get it or you don't, right? Like, either the word is for you or it's not. But those of you that know, the reason you have a knowing is because in this next season, you're going to be put in a leadership position to lead God's people through what is about to happen. But also because people are going to need to lean on someone emotionally, and you're going to be strong enough to do it. And even though you had to do this by yourself for a couple years before they're going to get to this point, you will be so grateful that you had the head start, because now you can navigate for everyone while they're doing it. And this is out of love, like, I know that if God chose you, then you're the kind of person that you're like, of course, I had to go through that because God needed me to lead at the appropriate time, and that time is coming. On the 6th, the Lord gave me a personal word, and he also said, the sea will cease to be. I believe this is a reference to the Red Sea. I'm not sure. Especially because he did make that comment on the 4th about the Pharaoh perishing at sea. On the 7th, One does not appear as one expects. This person does not look like how I thought. And this is something I thought to myself when I had this vision. If looks can be deceive, if looks can deceive, then the truth may not be so obvious. Help, getting help, strange things. The truth is more bizarre than fiction. Now, this word on this individual that does not appear how I thought, I'm nervous about this word because I got it in January. I got it on the 7th, and y'all will see that I get it a couple more times later this month. And what stresses me about this is that there is a huge emphasis on this person not appearing like what they should. And so that makes me think, is it the Antichrist? Is it, you know, something else? Is it like what is it? I don't understand it, right? But it's I'll get into it when I get to the next word I got about him. But this person, I don't know, highlight it, because this person is going to be important, because this person has, I don't know, come out in a lot of my words and I don't understand why. Now on the 9th, I received a vision of a woman in a position of authority with a cheating spouse. Now, this woman, she, I believe it's a legal position in which she has her power, and this spouse is like a spy of some sort for somebody, but this spouse has like a secret sex life or something, and she catches him being with another man, and he like doesn't really care, like he kind of just vanishes, right? It is important to her development and perhaps what comes of it. I'm not sure why I was shown this. I kind of just watched when God showed it to me, right? Um, but there was a huge emphasis on the fact that what he was doing was based on trauma and was like a trauma response, and him not knowing how to work through that trauma, but also feeling like he needed to accept that part of himself because of what he had been through to, I guess, get to that point. Um, and more so for her, it was like, I feel like people weren't surprised at that happening. I don't know if it's going to happen in like the news or if it's whatever, or I don't know if you're watching this video right now and like you suspect something is happening and you just found the evidence. The vision I got was that the evidence is seen. Um, Check his email, because you find the cheating in his emails. Um, I believe this is important because of the authority status that this person has. Like this is a high position of authority. Um, this male that has done you wrong or whatever is actually keeping an eye on this person and reporting back to somebody else. I don't know if it's like a competitor or like whatever. I don't know. Um, but I feel like this the spouse, the one that gets revealed or whatever, like he has issues. He needs to like go take a timeout or something. The female will be fine, but it's gonna be like a wake up call to like, oh, I trusted somebody and they screwed me over again. And like, I feel like the message is like, keep an eye on who is around you, but also like maybe it was obvious and it but it wasn't obvious to you. Um, and maybe ask more for like the feedback of others if you're going through this or whatever, because I feel like if you had asked for feedback on like, hey, what do you think about this person or like whatever, then maybe you wouldn't have gotten there. Or like, I don't know also if it's a metaphor or analogy for like the state of the dynamics of the sexes, right? Like I really don't understand. Like I just got this vision, right? And the Lord said to me, strange things, once again, the truth is more bizarre than fiction. And then he said, confirmations. Later that same day on the 9th, I heard the Lord say again, strange things. A continuance of strange things beheld. One does not look like he should. He is gifted, though, just like you. And I asked him, where is he, God, and what space has he occupied? Because the Lord gave me the impression that this is one that occupies territories. I tell him I see him in a region close, but I don't know where he is, but I see 2 feet landing. And then the Lord says this has another meaning. Do you remember the first time I talked to you about this person? And I was like, yes. And he had told me about this person back in January. And so I looked at my January notes. And he said, I told you stick the landing. And I was like, okay, but did you tell me to stick the landing, or was I listening to you tell him to stick the landing? Right. And then this is when I Googled what landing was in military applications. And this is an area where aircrafts can land. Um, and here's where I'm going to go into landing operation. Wait, hang on. Let me see how much time I have left. Okay. So a landing operation is a military operation during which a landing force, usually utilizing landing craft, is transferred to land with the purpose of power projection ashore. With the proliferation of aircraft, a landing may refer to amphibious forces, airborne forces, or a combination of both. Now, this is interesting because almost as many times as he has referenced this individual, he has referenced a landing military campaign. And I know to like maybe the soldiers or whatever, I sound like an idiot because it's like I'm not saying the landing in the proper context or whatever, but there's something about landing, like this person is arriving, like they have landed, but also landing, it being like a double entendre. And so something that I wanted to read also, look, check this out. This includes seizing, holding, or otherwise exploiting important tactical localities or installations in conjunction with or pending the arrival of other military naval forces. Such missions include seizure and clearance of landing fields, beachheads, strong points, and ports, seizure of essential observation of other critical terrain, severing hostile lines of communication and supply, destroying bridges, locks, public utility enterprises, and other designated demolitions, seizing river crossings, defiles, and other bottlenecks, blocking a hostile counterattack, interrupting the movements of hostile reserves, cooperating in the pursuit or breakthrough by ground forces by operating against enemy reserves and lines of communication, and blocking hostile avenues of retreat and preventing the enemy from destroying essential installations, supplies, and material. Where is my time? I can't see my clock. Now, why is this important? And this is where we're going to get into part 2. So watch part 2 now.